The idea, insight, or secret you need for massive impact is just moments away. It's time to claim your career crown. The podcast where business owners and entrepreneurs share the keys to the kingdom to help you open the vault to your greater success. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our very special guest, Kevin Lombardo.
Hey,
today,
Lynn,
we're going to be talking about, hi, Kevin. Yes, we're going to be talking about proven solutions for reducing costs while boosting productivity and morale. What hidden factors are hurting your business? If you get a ton of value from this episode, I would love to invite you to subscribe because it costs nothing to subscribe. Now, I just interrupted Kevin, so I'm going to tell you about Kevin. He is the president and CEO of DORN Companies. He drives workplace safety and ergonomic excellence across Fortune 500 manufacturers, airlines, aerospace, service industries, and municipalities, pioneering on-site and virtual solutions that significantly reduce ergonomic-related injuries. Kevin and his team consistently deliver annual savings exceeding, hold on to your socks, $10 million to their valued clients while achieving a remarkable 50% reduction in industries. This equates to an incredibly impressive 500% annual ROI. I mean, wow. I mean, Kevin, this is amazing. I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here, Lynn. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I got to make one correction there. This past year in 2023, we hit a milestone. The savings that we generated for our clients was 18 million.
Wow, my goodness. I'll make sure that we get that updated because that is almost double what it was before.
Yes.
Congratulations. I mean, this really gets into what inspired you to get started with innovation in wellness and injury prevention.
Well, you know, it's interesting. When I was running large organizations, and you and I have been colleagues in the past, and I ran a division and you were a senior executive in another division, safety and injury prevention, and then eventually wellness. But I think it started with safety and injury prevention first, because that was the traditional. That's always been really near and dear to my heart. In fact, I always had the safety executive report into the president's office and kind of separated from, in some companies it's in HR, in some companies it's in operations. And I really wanted to elevate it when I took over the division that we both, in the parent company, we both worked for. And so it's always just been an important component. And because the division I was in, we were 9 acquisitions over 3 years. And when you take all those acquisitions, you kind of bundle them together and you just look at the data. A lot of smaller companies, some larger companies. Total worker comp was like $1 million, $1.2 million, give or take. And over the course of about 2.5 years, we got it down to under $100,000. And that was, it just became, and when you work for large organizations, usually safety and injury prevention set of data is the first thing that happens in board meetings. And so having that mindset helped bring, when we had these 9 acquisitions coming together, of that, having that mindset of how do we really eliminate risk? And then you start looking at the human factor of it, right? And you start thinking about, okay, more holistically, wellness. So my path, it has been a journey. It's been a multi-year journey from reduce injuries, reduce comp costs, which was cost driven, to how do we take a holistic view of our workforce? We're a believer in NIOSH's total worker health philosophy. It's the core philosophy that drives everything that we do, which is nothing more than taking a holistic view of your organization, looking at demographics, whether it's age bands, whether it's languages, whether it's gender, whatever it might be, cultural differences that people have. And then how do you really develop programming that can really touch as many people as possible? And so that journey continued to where it is today, where we think more about overall wellness. So when we position ourselves, we tell people we're a wellness-based injury prevention and ergonomic company. Always use the term wellness-based because at the end of the day, it is about wellness. And what we uncovered early on is that what we were doing and how we were supporting people not only had an impact on that worker comp, that injury rate, that DART rate, all those things that senior executives look at on the report card, it was reducing healthcare costs as well, non-injuries, because we were addressing X number of people throughout the whole organization, not just addressing that particular injury and go and finding the root cause, which we do a lot of, but we were really trying to take that holistic approach. So it's been an evolution for me personally as well to this wellness-based philosophy, and we can go deeper into that. I got a whole discussion that I do around the country around what's the future of EHS, of safety.
Yeah.
And it's radically changed over the last 3 years. And so we can talk about that if it makes sense at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that really comes into the next question I had was, how do innovation in wellness and injury prevention, how do they intersect with that reducing costs while boosting productivity and morale?
Well, they intersect in a way because a lot of, when you look out there, there's a lot of companies like DORN, and there's a lot that do great work. One of the things that we try to pride ourselves is how do we differentiate ourselves? And it is that integration. And one of a tagline that we have, and I tell people it's more than a tagline, it's really a belief system, is empowerment through education and engagement. And I think the philosophy of total worker health, which drives our core, against also empowerment through education and engagement, which is how we deliver, separates us from other organizations. And so you didn't hear me say empowerment through ergonomics or empowerment through stretching or empowerment through therapy or whatever it might be. It's empowerment through education and engagement. And our integrated service model is really neat because we put wellness at the center. And then as you build, so we have programs around that. Then as you build out, you got early symptom intervention because you want to get things as early as possible. Well, if something happens, we have injury prevention. And then if something worse happens, we have return to work. And so, but as you look at it, and what I tell clients or potential clients is that everything in that space, when you hire us, you get all of that. Doesn't mean we show up every day or every week and that's what we do, this whole mirage of different types of services, but it's a journey. What are your needs today? Let's get in there, address those needs, fix those needs, eradicate the issues. But then let's take a journey together and let's move along the continuum where at the end of the day, we are empowering people. And through engagement, education, we're meeting people where they're at. Not so much, hey, we have this new program, everybody get on board. We're meeting people where they're at and trying to bring them to where hopefully they should be. So we take a journey with people. And I think that's really been a big differentiator for us, is that bringing those things together. And then you talked about innovation. And so I want to, divert a couple of places here if I could.
Yeah.
Innovation is safety technology. You go any safety show today, probably 75% of the vendors have some type of safety tech. Wearable sensors, it could be a Fitbit, it could be motion capture, AI driven, it could be fatigue identification, and we sell all that stuff. But the reality of it is, where's that play in their journey? Where are they in their journey to really use that, and why do they want to use it? When I've had somebody reach out to say, hey, we saw you do exoskeletons, which is kind of the suits that help people in their posture. We love to do this. I usually spend the first half hour trying to figure out how to talk them out of it, because what is your end goal? We probably have a solution for that. And by the way, it might be exoskeletons. I don't know. I'm not going to just sell you an exoskeleton. I'm going to try to figure out what your real issue is, and then try to address it in the most efficient, cost-effective way. But innovation comes into that. And then when you think about, and this is where I talk a lot over the year, the future of EHS. If you go back pre-COVID, the role of an EHS safety person was injury prevention, compliance, and environmental, like industrial hygienist, air quality, that type of thing. That was their job. Today, it's those three. You have to layer on the impact of all this technology they get besieged with all of this. You have to layer in the impact of infectious diseases, because fortunately one of it's behind us, and really the reality of it is it really hasn't gone away. It's now part of our permanent life cycles and lifestyles, but we don't know when the next one's coming. It could be a year, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. And what I tell people is, you did a great job in protecting your employees. Don't let it sit on the shelf. Be like a first responder. Take it off the shelf once a year and practice it. Do the things and make sure, because it's coming. So they have infectious disease. The other piece, which is significant, and people initially didn't think about it, but they think about it a lot now, the impact of wellness and mental health on ergonomic risk. Because we're talking to safety managers, I do have to relate it back to ergonomic risk, but whether you talk about wellness, but the impact of mental health and wellness on ergonomic risk. And we now can sort of address it in a way that we have apps, we have access to information. We're not trying to make a safety manager or a supervisor being able to diagnose somebody, but really identify if there's an issue and then bring the right resources in to help. So we help educate people on how to identify risk related to mental health and wellness. So that's where the future is going. And it's become a little bit overwhelming for organizations, especially those who might have a single safety professional, some that may not have, they may have multiple people, but that's because of the complexity of their business, to now take on all these new things from technology, mental health, wellness, infectious diseases, and so forth and so forth. And they keep adding, right? And so the world is evolving. We're going through a whole reimagining of DORN right now. And we're going to be talking about injury prevention reimagined. And it's really bringing all these holistic pieces together. And how do you do that cost effectively in a way that makes sense? So the world is changing rapidly. We're trying to stay ahead of the curve, ourselves and through partnerships and so forth. But it's an exciting time, but it's also pretty overwhelming for our client base, for sure.
Yeah. Well, just what you've been sharing, it sounds like you've got a really set process for how you implement and execute solutions. And I would love to hear more about how you do this.
Sure. So I'll keep it at the high level, because we don't want to bore people with all the great details. But honestly, it starts simplistically with a site assessment. It really does. Well, no, I'm going to take it back. It starts during the sales process, where we're actually understanding the issues, because there's a lot of times where, we're doing a sales presentation and somebody says, this sounds great, but I don't know if I need you. I don't know where to start. So we take a step back and then we say, okay, let's learn about you. Forget my slides, forget my sales pitch. Let's learn about you. What's going on in your world? What's keeping you up at night? What are some of the issues you're wrestling with? And when you get people to start thinking, they may have 2 or 3 at the top of their head, but then when you start asking some questions a little bit deeper, that translates into 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe other potential issues. So let's say we move forward and they say, hey, we'd love to have you, come aboard and help us with your programming. We start with a site assessment. And what we're doing is we're on site for a day, could be 2 days, depending on the size of the company. And we're really just observing. We're not doing detailed ergonomic assessment. We're just observing. We're watching the interactions with people. We're watching how people operate. And I'll give you a great example. I was at a client last week in Dallas, and he was taking me through the plant. This happens to be a plant we're not in. And he was taking me through the plant. And this woman, they basically put some stuff in, they create some goo that goes into a cylinder. So 20 to 30 times a day, this woman reaches her hand in, bends her body to get her hand in, and has to unscrew, pull out, and put the new cartridge in and screw it back. And I'm looking at this and saying, you got a couple of issues right here. One, she's doing this leaning sideways, so you got a whole slew of issues there. 2, ergonomically, why don't you guys just create something that's instead of twisting it, it just snaps once, pull out, snaps once, put back in. And they're going, oh, we didn't think of that, because they're so busy with everything else that they don't see some things that may be obvious. So we do this observation. We say, okay, we're seeing some things you guys can go do yourself right now. That would be one of them that they can do themselves. 2, here's how our programming, I talked about it could be wellness, early symptom intervention, injury prevention, return to work. Here's how our programming will play. And we create a roadmap for the first month, week to week, shift to shift, what we're going to do. Now, does that get modified during the course of that first month? Sure, it does. But for the most part, we're able to stick with it. And then we regroup with them at the end of the month and say, okay, what are we finding? We tweak here, tweak there, whatever it is. So it's a really defined process that we have that really tries to solicit out of the client where they believe their issues are. We look at their data, we look at their work comp data, their injury data, all that good stuff, but we also want to be on site observing. And then it's developing that partnership of here's the approach we're going to take. Is it going to be department specific? Is it going to be more macro across everybody? How do you want it to be handled? The other piece that really makes our programming as successful as it is, we do a lot of supervisor training now. We will train people. We have trainings that are anywhere from just a lunch and learn on who we are, what we do, giving them samples, what we do, just to get supervisor buy-in. But more and more clients are asking us to do what we offer, which is supervisor training. We have something we call Ergo Aware. We have a 101 course and we have a 201 course. It's giving people ergonomic eyes. So the more that because you could have a client, let's say they have 400 people. We're there maybe 16, max 20 hours a week, but more than like 12 to 16. That means we're not there 80 hours first shift and second shift. We're just not there. So we want to give supervisors ergonomic eyes to see risk, to adjust things that they can adjust, minor issues that they can address immediately with the employee before it becomes something major. Or they could say, you know what, when DORN comes in on Thursday, we're going to have them look at this workstation and so forth and so forth and so forth. So it's a fully integrated process that they're really part of the whole process until it's onboarded. And then their involvement is, we send every time we're there, we send what we call post-session notes, which is once a week, once a month if we're doing what we call our deep tissue work. If we're doing a lot of non-therapy work, we'll send them a monthly report of ergonomic observations, issues, financial impact of all that. And then once a quarter, we kind of pull all the data together and say, here's what here's what we're seeing. Here's the results of that. And then from there, we do the modifications we need to, and what's the next step of that journey. So it's a pretty engaging process. But then once we're starting, we try to keep their need to be engaged weekly with us at a minimum from a informational standpoint versus, oh, I need to spend 4 hours with DORN every week. No, they don't. So upfront, a lot of engagement, and then, engagement as needed. Or so they desire, whatever that is.
So just from listening and hearing what you were, the examples that you're also providing, I'm curious, why is reducing costs while boosting productivity and morale typically such a blind spot within organizations?
It is a blind spot. So I can give you an example. Talked to somebody yesterday who just loves what we do. And they said, okay, this deep tissue stuff, non-starter here. I said, oh, why is that? Tell me about that. Well, because our techniques are, the basis of them is in massage and Rolfing and, stuff like that. So which also is non-OSHA recordable. And I said, well, probably because you use the word massage. And I've always told people, if you use the word massage, the operations person, their hearing aid just goes off. And that's exactly what happened because that's what she used. I said, that's not what we're doing. We're doing deep tissue myofascial release to eliminate pain and discomfort for those who have it. I said, but I'm not here to upset your culture and try to force anything on you. Let's do something different. You have a corporate initiative that says you've got to assess every workstation. We can do that. If you have people that say, I hurt my back and I want to go to the clinic, we're an alternative to the clinic and we keep people out of the clinic. So I think what happens from that standpoint is you got to get over some preconceived notions on some of this. 2, you got to be able to identify you mentioned the 500% ROI, annual ROI. You got to be able to demonstrate that. And and one of the things I've always said early on when I started here was, you should see with us immediacy of ROI, but long-term sustainable cultural change. The piece that I am most proud of, besides keeping people injury-free, is the fact that we do see cultural change. 95% of the people we work with say they have improved morale. It's somewhere around 78% indicate less stress. Improvement in sleep patterns. I'm stopping going to a doctor. That's like 25, 30% indicate I don't need to go to my doctor anymore. If they've gone to it, 25 or 30% of those who are seeing a doctor or somebody doing something. 44% pain medication reduction. Self-reported absenteeism reduction of 59%. Easier to do my job, 98%. So there's just a number of things that when you put it in front of the safety person, they get it. But being able to move that up the chain, that becomes a little bit more difficult so the answer why, I can't tell you why, but all I could do is demonstrate. And when we demonstrate, people get it. So, I mean, we've been pretty successful. We grew, if I adjust for one client that became an issue last year, our real raw growth was like 43% last year. So there's a lot of people who get it. And then what happens, it starts spreading in organizations. So this one particular company, we went in there, and in the first 90 days, their calls to their 1-800 triage went down to almost zero. Second, in the first year, they had an 81% injury reduction. We're now in 3 of those locations. Now they have 100 locations in the US, so we have a little bit of work to do, but we were able to go from 1 in the first year to 3 currently. And so you got to prove yourself, no matter what you're selling, no matter what you're delivering. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to prove yourself that what you're saying you can do, you can do.
Oh, absolutely. So for people who are listening in and this is resonating, especially about how important, wellness is now more than ever, and especially, the connection with mental illness, what should those audience members do next, about, moving forward to implement, proven solutions for reducing costs while boosting productivity and morale?
Well, they could take one of two. They could take one of two avenues. They could start the discussions internally as to what are our objectives. I'm a firm believer, and I will tell you that OSHA is actually coming down this way as well. Now we'll see what happens with the elections in November. And as you know, if one party wins, usually the impact of OSHA becomes lessened. If another party wins, it usually becomes more, maybe too cumbersome and too much more. But it's the nature of the beast that we all live within here in the U.S. But I would say start having those conversations internally. I think developing an ergonomic strategy is important. Don't just rush out and say, hey, I heard this great podcast and we should get this type of programming. If you don't have a strategy, we've helped plenty of companies develop a 5-year strategy. Sometimes it could be start with a simple assessment. We have a client down in Texas. For 2 years, we did a number of projects. We did a site assessment. We did 5 or 6 workstation assessments, detailed workstation assessments. We helped their engineers automate a department, and it wasn't automate to eliminate labor, it was automation to eliminate risk. And so we kind of did the pre-work to identify, here's your 3 to 5 points of heavy risk for injury. They showed us how they were going to automate and said, okay, you've eliminated 4 of those, you've lessened 1 of them, but you introduced 2 others. The net, you're positive if that's the route you want to go, we're comfortable that you go that route. To eventually they said, okay, they don't have a safety committee. They call it an ergonomic action team. And I just love the label. 1, because it's not committee, it's an action team. And 2, the fact that it's ergonomic. It's not just safety. It goes beyond safety. So we've trained them in our Ergo 101 course, our Ergo 201 course. And then eventually they said, you know what? We're going to try your week-to-week program that we do. This is after about 1.5 years of all these projects. because I said, yeah, it's actually getting pretty expensive for you to keep flying us in to do all these projects when we could be right there and do the same thing in addition to XYZ. They said, yeah, we'll try it for 6 months. 3 months in, they called up and said, here's your PO for next year. So let's get going. So it just depends on where the organization's at. If the organization is a little bit in crisis mode, which we get a lot of those calls, then programming, we define the specific program to start with. Like I said, it could be a journey, and there's so many services that we offer. We start with that and we move it along. It could be somebody who's like, hey, we need an ergonomic strategy before we decide what type of programming. Could be that. Could be we just want training. We want ergo aware training, or we want movement and conditioning and mobility training. Hey, we're interested in safety technology. So it just depends on where somebody's at. And I think even organizations that have very low number of issues and low number of injuries look at us and say, okay, we're past XYZ, which is probably, if I'm honest with you, if I go back 5-6 years, that's all we did. So those organizations couldn't be a customer because what we were addressing, they had already addressed. But maybe they're somewhere else. Maybe they want to, we have a client where we could do a lot of ergonomic work. And they said, no, we want our supervisors to be our ergonomists. Now we're there week to week doing some other work, but we're training their people to be ergonomists. We're reviewing their assessments. We're giving them feedback. We trained them on how to do them. We let them go do it. We're reviewing them or giving them feedback, so forth and so forth. So there's it just depends on where somebody's at. But I think you gotta have the conversation that organizationally we're open to it. Because a lot of times we'll have a conversation. It's like, well, now I got to sell it to 3 layers. Okay, we can help you with that. But it might be premature because their belief system of what they think you need and what you may have identified as a need could be 2 different things. You can't just hire us until you bridge that gap. So it just depends on where everybody's at.
Yeah, absolutely. But it does sound like starting the dialogue and starting the conversation internally and then with you is definitely that first step. So, Kevin, is there anything that you wish that I had asked you? Because I know you alluded to some other things that you'd like to go down a path that you'd like to share.
Just that, if people, and I'm very open if people just want to chat, if they say, hey, I'm not sure where to get started on this, I'm very, I'm available for anybody who just wants to chat and just wants to have a conversation, talk about the culture. Because I've been on both sides of it. I've been in organizations, like I said, where safety reported to my office as the president of the division. I've been in organizations where it didn't. But if people just want to chat and try to brainstorm what they might need, where they might go, even if it's something we don't do, I can help point people in the right direction. So, at the end of the day, I'm a pay it forward type of person. So I'm always open to helping people. I think the key is I do encourage everybody, even if you don't go through the process of trying to adopt total worker health as a philosophy, review it, understand it, believe it. There's nuggets in there for anybody. 2, there's empowerment through education and engagement. You empower people all the time. You give them training, you give them hard hats, you give them safety glasses, you give them hand tools. You're empowering them. Empower them as much as you can. We're just a tool to empower them. And then 3, it's another talk that I've been doing lately. In addition to the future of EHS, understand that. And as you have opportunities, bring some skills around you to fill those gaps. But lastly, I've been talking lately about ergonomic for all ages, from baby boomers all the way down, because there still are 5 generations. Now, most of the silent generation, if they're still working, they're working maybe at Walmart and stuff like that. But let's say there's 4 or 3 generations working together in multiple cultures. Understand that and understand the ergonomic risks behind it. And then how do your programs stack up to be able to touch people? Are they the millennials who just want to look on their phone and get a headline? Are they people that like PowerPoint? Are they kinesthetic type learners? You have to understand your organization. And so we did a whole talk on that at a conference a couple of weeks ago. And in March, I'm going to be doing the same thing. It's something, and we just I just noticed we just published a blog on ergonomics for all ages. Encourage everybody to go to dorncompanies.com and find that latest blog and just review it. And again, if there's just something in there you just want to chat about, reach out. I'm always here to just chat with people. I love, talking to people and learning about them and what they want to do. And, maybe we can help them, maybe we can't.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for sharing proven solutions for reducing costs while boosting productivity and morale. So I know you just mentioned it, but I know that our listeners are going to want to know more about you and where they can find and connect with you. Could you share that?
Sure. It's Kevin at dorncompanies.com, Dorn, DORN, companies, plural. So Kevin at dorncompanies.com, or just call me, 303-818-8528. Be glad to take your call.
All right. Well, Kevin, thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who tuned in. This has been such an informative discussion. Kevin, thank you again. This has been wonderful.
My pleasure, Lynn. And good to see you again.
What was your biggest takeaway from this episode? I would love to hear about it. It's important to share the things you love. If you loved this episode, a 5-star review really helps keep the podcast coming to you regularly. Also, if you want to get more sales strategies to grow your business, make sure you subscribe right now. If you want to get results even faster, I invite you to download my sales strategy checklist at petitetoqueen.com/checklist. This has been Lynn Whitbeck, host of Claim Your Career Crown. I'll see you next time.